Well, that was not a common Bengals W on Saturday, but there are some W's to take away from that. What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp here for Common Bengals W. You can find us on YouTube, on Twitter, X at Common Bengals W, or on commonbengalsw.com. I have not been uploading these to the podcast feed. I probably should, but listen, I don't think that many of you are watching, listening anyway. But listen, we're doing this for fun. If you're here, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment, leave a little chat, whatever that might be. Retweet the Twitter post that's on. I stream on my personal Twitter as well as the Common Bengals W Twitter. We're going to talk about Evan McPherson's new deal. We're going to talk about some Jamar Chase stuff. We're going to talk about the preseason game against the Bears. That was just a trash fire on Saturday. But like, we're talking about Logan Woodside throwing the ball, which he did very good in the first half, as opposed to Jake Browning, who missed the game. I think he had some rib tenderness or something. And Joe Burrow, who it just didn't make sense to play him. I would imagine that Joe Burrow plays Thursday a little bit, and then Jake Browning plays hopefully a little bit as well. We don't need to see any more Logan Woodside. We've gotten looks at him for years, but what we are going to get a lot more looks at is Evan Money McPherson. Now, I don't know that he has ever really drastically improved from that rookie season that we saw that was just so special. But he is absolutely worth the Bengals keeping long-term. 3 years, $16.5 million contract. That is a big contract for a kicker, but he is a guy that I feel very comfortable with. I feel very confident in. It's not a guy like that every time you go out there, you're like, man, he's gonna miss this. You feel like you've got a very good chance, a better chance than not for him to make the kick if it's 55 yards. You know what I mean? Like that's the benefit of having an Evan McPherson. And I think sometimes you take that for granted. I mean, I know that that after the kicking woes that we had a few years ago, drafting a kicker and actually hitting on that was obviously something that was very important, because we're going through it now with the punting woes, which we are going to talk about later. But man, we had Kevin Huber, who was decent, if not good, for a decade and a half. And then all of a sudden, he's not good anymore. He has to retire. And there's a lot of really terrible options there. I mean, Randy Bullock was the guy before Evan McPherson, and it wasn't hitting, man. It didn't work. It wasn't good. And now Evan McPherson is a guy that we don't have to worry about anymore. So, and he nailed a great kick. We got some people in the chat. Connor Augustine says, depends on who you ask if it was in a common Bengals W. I will say this. I have grown to really enjoy preseason football because it is completely pressure-free. The starters weren't playing. In fact, I wanted to see the second team because of a lot of the depth issues on defense for the Bengals, which there were some promising things to at least emerge from there. But yeah, I can also watch defense and not feel any pressure. Natty Ron says, what's good, my Cincy peeps? Hooday, first time watching. What's good? Glad to see you here. Trying to get my foothold in this Bengals community. I do this for fun, but you know what? Natty also says he was so good in his rookie year and has been clutch for the Bengals. Well deserved. He absolutely does deserve that. And he says Money Mac deserves that pay, especially for that Super Bowl run. Yeah, that's why I'm like, give him that extension, man. Like, I realize the Bengals right now with, Burrow getting paid and Jamar Chase wants paid and Trey Hendrickson wants a longer deal. The O-line, you got to put money into that. I figure they'll be drafting pretty heavily on the O-line to get cheaper next year. But you got to reward those people that took you there. Some services rendered type of situations. Now, some notes that I am seeing. Mike Petraglia says Trent Brown is doing better. Day-to-day, Zach Taylor expects him to participate in Tuesday's joint practice with the Colts. On T. Higgins, Zach Taylor says he looks as good as he's ever looked. He does look great. Bengals defensive end Sam Hubbard will start working his way back into practice. Per Zach Taylor, he will participate in individual drills. Kendrick Pryor likely out this week with a finger injury. So there are a lot of things to cover about this preseason game. No touchdown scored from the Bengals. Woof. Listen, I get it. Didn't have first, second string running back in. Didn't have. You had Tanner Hudson in. Tanner Hudson got some looks. Jermaine Burton got some looks. Jermaine Burton, in a couple spots, looked like he should be that wide receiver 4. Like, I know that a lot of people are like, man, wide receiver 3 immediately. And maybe he eventually becomes that. But I think that Trenton Irwin, over the last 2 years specifically, has sort of earned that. Now, I know he only had 1 touchdown last year, but this guy had 316 yards on 32 targets. That's pretty good, man. And when he filled in a couple years ago, he became that guy. He has a great rapport with Joe Burrow. They just, as Natty Ron says, Joe Burrow trusts Trent. Yeah, he does. He absolutely trusts Trent. And I think that's important. And I think Jermaine Burton's going to get there. And then probably next year, Jermaine Burton's probably the wide receiver 2 because T. Higgins is going to be gone. But I think that Trenton Irwin has sort of established that. And also, I think Mike Gesicki's probably going to be in the slot more than the actual tight end area. But like I've mentioned this before, like we lost Tyler Boyd. That sucks. That's a bummer, right? But I think the tight ends are going to be used a lot more. And I think that's why they loaded up on them. I think that's why they got Mike Gesicki. They brought back Tanner Hudson. They brought back Drew Sample. I don't know about bringing him back for that much, but they brought him back. Then they drafted a couple of very athletic tight ends as well, because I think they are going to go that route. You look at what Travis Kelce has done for Patrick Mahomes. You look at what Gronk and that other fella did for Tom Brady, especially in a situation where even when the O-line is a little more loaded, Joe Burrow gets rid of the ball much quicker, and it's good to have tight ends to go to there. So Josh Newton. So I still think the Bengals probably should get a veteran corner, but the first half, Josh Newton looked very good. He was rated incredibly last week. I don't know what all the ratings mean in that sense, but rated very good last week, and he had a very, very bad DPI call on him. And by that, I mean he didn't touch the guy. He didn't touch the guy. Then in the second half, he got torched, man. Absolutely torched. Matt Lee looked very good. Matt Lee should be the backup center for the Cincinnati Bengals. When he got picked in the 7th round, it's like, all right, that might be one of the better 2nd or 7th round picks the Bengals ever have. Now, they have already signed Ted Karras through next year. That's good. I think based on what we see now, Matt Lee can get ready for 2 years from now. And then we'll have 2 years of a pretty cost-effective Matt Lee. And then after that, maybe even more inexpensive than Ted Karras, but he looked great. Jamar Chase was there. He is still holding in. Listen, here's how I feel at this point. The man has 2 years left on his contract. He has 2 years left on his contract. I don't necessarily like when talent and, players do that. Sorry, I got a little distracted from a day job tweet or a day job text. But I also feel like if the Bengals went ahead and got this done now, I'm still trying to learn about the salary cap, by the way, but you apply some of that bonus. I don't know if you're allowed to this early, but you go ahead and apply it now and spread it out, and then you run into less cap trouble down the line. Listen, if Jamar Chase is willing to sign this deal 2 years ahead of his expiring, if as long as he's okay with that 5th year option being picked up, Well, then that's going to be great for the Bengals. Now, if he wants them to decline that option, and I don't know the legalities or the realities of that, and get paid insanely high next year, well, that's not going to work. That's not great. That's why you draft people. That's why there are rookie deals. But I say go ahead, sign him now. That way, in 2 years, when that market resets, you've already got that taken care of. I mean, look, after this year, Dak Prescott is going to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And Dak's fine. Dak's good. But wouldn't you rather have a healthy Joe Burrow than Dak Prescott at 31? I mean, let's see. Yeah, he's 31. He'll be 32 next year. I sure would. That's the nature of the game. And the salary cap's going to keep on expanding because football is not getting any less popular in that sense. But salaries expand as well. So if you know me, you know that I complain about Bengals screens. I don't think they do them very well. Second team did them pretty well. A lot better than the first team usually does. And it wasn't just screen, get caught, 2 yards past the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. There were some cuts in there that it looked like really good plays that could help the Cincinnati Bengals this year. Caleb Williams looked good here and there, had some consistency issues, but every so often you saw those flashes. Like you saw some, he should be embarrassing a second or third team from the Bengals. It was more the third team than the second team, but he should be embarrassing them. Tyson Bagent, they got a good backup quarterback now. That's very promising for them. Some other things that I wanted to highlight. Chris Jenkins had a great sack. That's what you want to see, especially when defensive tackle is such a concern for the Cincinnati Bengals. You want to see a guy like Chris Jenkins, who they invested in such a high draft spot, get that type of opportunity and capitalize on it. Now, there were an awful lot of plays that should have been blown up well before they were, and Caleb Williams should have been, tackled and handled there. But listen, again, these are your backups, and in the event that any of these guys that saw the field when Caleb Williams is doing some of that stuff hit the field, we're probably in a bad position anyway. But let me tell you what we're not in a bad position on, and I apologize ahead of time for butchering his name, but Njongmeta, holy cow, he's incredible. Undrafted this year, should make the team. I'm decided on he and Matt Lee, and obviously Jermaine Burton is going to make the team, but probably deeper down the roster. But what I've seen out of those three, all three of those guys should make the team. It was phenomenal, his performance last week and this week, and he was highly rated as well. Didn't end up getting picked. Zach Taylor said there's no reason to push Jake Browning and have him go tomorrow against the Colts. They're going to rest the injury. So that might be a little more indicative of him playing Thursday as he needs to. Jake Browning does need to play Thursday. Zach Taylor declined to say whether or not Jamar Chase's absence last week was excused or unexcused. Taylor said that's all he's got to say about the situation. Yeah. It was very, very nice to hear that Trent Brown is going to be involved in this practice as well, because they need him to. And I think it was very smart, even though they got Amarius Mims and they knew what they were targeting in that draft, that they went and got a Trent Brown. I fired up Madden, bro. Trent Brown was rated 89. I'm like, damn, really? All right. If he can give us that this year, please. Ace says, to quote Tom Grossi, kitties go meow to win the NFC or AFC North. I did watch his videos. I'm glad that he came to the stadium, but the thing, wasn't like showing off the amenities or anything as much as, oh, look at all the cool stuff they did for me, which is, cool for him. I'm glad. We didn't get our season ticket tour this year because they were renovating. I don't know if that's a thing that they'll do at some other point or what, But yeah, we didn't get that this year. But yeah, Njongmeta needs to make that team as of now. Unless he just has a horrific Thursday, he should make that team. Practice notes. Oh man, practice was horrible last week in the rain. They decided to do that as they need to, but there were injuries. Joe Burrow got picked a bunch. Not good. Well, listen, I don't put too much stock into these practices. Obviously, you want to practice, but I don't put a ton of stock into it because in the rain, minimal contact. Yeah. Second team defense for the Bengals. That first half looked very good. I just want to say that. They put it together. If the Cincinnati Bengals first team defense can put together runs like that against first teams that have the talent of the Chicago Bears, I will be very satisfied this year, because if you watch any of my shows last year, I thought there were a couple things that were really misrepresented. When the Bengals would do national games, you would sometimes hear a couple things like, oh, the Bengals forced so many turnovers and they got a great defense. No, the Bengals did not have a great defense last year. They were way too susceptible to the run. They would get sliced and diced over the middle, and their corners would get burned an awful lot. And that's I am as much of a layman as possible. I am learning more about football every day, but I still know very little. And those were very clear. Allowed the run too much, got sliced and diced over the middle, got burned a lot. Now, what the Bengals were really great at were forcing fourth downs in the red zone and forcing these miraculous turnovers, these miraculous deflections that end up to be interceptions, or these forced fumbles, or whatever that may be. And they've been really good at that for like a year and a half. There's no other way to chop that up besides they're very good at it or they're very lucky. One or the other. Based on what we see and how quickly and often teams moved the ball up the field last year, it seems like they were lucky more than good, because I would much rather them do those miracle turnovers at their own 40 than in the red zone. You know what I mean? I would much rather that, but they were very good at that. And another thing that national telecasters would say is, oh, the Bengals are one of the best teams in the league at screen passes. And I'm like, well, just because they have more screen pass yards because they've done so many of them doesn't necessarily mean that. Punting battle. Oh boy. So listen, I think Robin's sister was in my mentions the other day, because I had I said 50-yard punt by Brad Robbins. What's the occasion? Like, when's the parade? And she said, actually, it was a 60-yard. And I said, in that case, I'll throw the damn parade. The punting has been really bad for 2.5 years, 3 years for the Bengals. Kevin Huber, bless him, love him. If a punter would ever get into a Ring of Honor, it should be that guy. He was so bad 2 years ago. They brought in Drew Chrisman. Drew Chrisman was solid. He was okay. And I had somebody that I really like and respect said, well, he was only marginally better than Robbins. And I'm like, no, Robbins was historically bad. He was really bad. Had me thinking, you know what? Maybe I should have punted when I was younger. Maybe I should have given it a go. He was so bad. Now, Ryan Rico got all the punts the other day, and his average was 46.2. And boy, let me tell you, did he get a lot of opportunities to punt that ball. He got a ton. Now, the Bengals burned a pick on him. This makes me wonder, how bad was McNamara, the fact that he didn't even get in this battle with Robbins and Ryan Rico? I was taking Ryan in some of the last rounds of some of the mock drafts we did. But yeah, it's not good. Listen, if Brad Robbins could boom 60-yarders every time, oh boy. Ryan Rico did. I think he hit like a 56-yarder. Only one of his 6 punts ended up in the 20. Bengals had problems at punter. That is just an objective situation there. They have trouble at punter. And they need to fix it. They really do. Because when you allow teams to march up the field the way that the Bengals do, you got to be more consistent on that. And Ryan Rico last week was like, he averaged 56 yards a punt. Brad Robbins averaged 50. You don't want to turn around and average 46. And Brad Robbins had a 60-yarder last week. Rico had 59. Now, I know that the weather conditions were a little bit suboptimal. Orange jerseys. Okay, the Bengals announced, well, they didn't announce. Madden leaked the news accidentally that the Bengals will be doing all orange outfits. Like, listen, I think the Bengals have the most badass jerseys, period. But here we go. Weeks 1 and 13 against the Patriots and the Steelers, they are doing the alternate orange. Week 2, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 15, and 18. That is against the Chiefs, Giants, Browns, Eagles, Ravens, Chargers, Titans, and Steelers. They are doing the primary white, which doesn't seem like, so no white helmets this year, I guess. And then week 3 against Washington, week 4 against Carolina, 5 against Baltimore, 9 against Las Vegas, 14 against Dallas, 16 against Cleveland, and 17 against Denver. They are wearing their primary blacks. So an orange out the first week. But yeah, I get they need to put out some better orange shirts because they're really bad. Really, really bad. Guys, let me know what you think. Let me know what you're excited about, what you want to see. Until next time, we're out.